Good news, everyone! Patch 1.09 has brought us Platinum difficulty finally, so that's what we're going to be covering this time. Oh, and also, hi, I'm Tuftdog. If you want to play together and keep up, you can find me on Twitter now. I have like 2.5 followers at least, so I'm doing pretty good over there. I think like half of that is my mom, but yeah, it's a little lonely. Anyways, have you guys dipped your toes into the piranha tank that is Platinum yet? Have you not had a chance? What do you guys think of it? I think it's pretty fantastic. It's definitely a lot more challenging than Gold, which I think makes it a lot more fun. Some people are saying it's a little overtuned, but I think it's pretty good. But what do you guys think? What do you mean that's a generic attempt to encourage common discussion? Don't be rude. Double anyways. As always in the description, you can find timestamps to the various kind of checkpoints throughout the guide. So yeah, okay, let's go.
Here we go!
First up, the basics. In Platinum, you have the base enemy faction that you choose, but now they have assistance from all other factions as well. So for example, if you choose Remnant, that doesn't protect you from getting stun-locked by those dickhead berserkers at some point. The selected faction determines what the majority of what you encounter is, but realistically, you need to be as well prepared as you can to handle a wide variety of enemies, because inevitably you will be facing them all throughout a match. This patch built upon the boss mechanic that we saw previously in some Apex missions. The bosses now are the Spider Destroyer, the Racecar Hydra, and the Ket Zerker. I'm not very good with names, okay? Leave me alone. They're essentially just hyper-aggressive, super-powered variants of the normal forms. The Spider Destroyer has this new, like, floaty, slow-moving blue bubble bomb attack, and it also spawns red observers endlessly. When you're trying to finish off a wave, you don't want to focus on those red observers because they don't actually count towards wave progression, and Mr. Spidey will just sit there and endlessly spawn more, so it ends up being a waste of your time. When trying to deal with Mr. Spidey, you first want to take out those turrets. They will absolutely melt you, and removing them relieves a lot of pressure from your team. I suggest knocking those turrets off ASAP, and then clear out the rest of the enemies, or as many as possible, before returning back to finish off Mr. Spidey. When you are trying to finish him off, just like any other destroyer, you want to wait for him to expose that weak point by opening up his chest to shoot that hyper beam nonsense. Also, you want to make sure that you stay out of melee range, or he's going to do that bubble up attack that destroyers do to try and melt nearby players. This ends up wasting a lot of time because, just like normal destroyers, when they're bubbling, they're not hyper beaming, which means they're not exposing their weak point, and without those weak point hits, it ends up just taking a really long time to kill them. The Racecar Hydra is a super fast variant of the normal Hydra. His fancy new attack is an obnoxious machine gun that he can still fire while locking on with his rockets. So he's kind of difficult to deal with when he's still got that tracking lens, which means in order to deal with them, these beefy baddies, you first want to shoot out that eye. If you disable its ability to track you, then you're effectively disabling its ability to mow down your team from across the map over and over. After that, they're not super threatening anymore. You just gotta shove all of your bullets into that canister on their back, which is their weak point, same as any Hydra. One thing to be aware of, though, is that since they move so quickly compared to normal Hydras, you're much more susceptible to being instantly downed by their Mega Punch nonsense, so make sure that you're trying to keep a safe distance from them. The Ket Zerker is a giant pain in the ass. His new attack is effectively a Dawn shotgun that shoots Destron grenades. He's basically just going to make the map look like it has smallpox. As far as I can tell, there isn't a way to gimp him like there is with the other bosses, so your only real option is to just aim for his throat and shoot like crazy. Something to be aware of is when he gets low, just like all berserkers, he throws his little temper tantrum and then he starts to quickly regenerate health. You want to make sure that if you're dropping him low, you're able to finish him off fairly quickly before he heals all that damage that you and your team put into him. Cobras were nerfed and can no longer crit, so this has really diminished their usefulness in terms of damage, but they're still pretty handy. Instead of hoarding them as valuable destroyer insta-gibs, since that's a thing of the past now, use them to quickly debilitate bosses. While they don't do enough damage to make using them for killing worthwhile most of the time, they are still useful for those bursts of damage on the destroyers to quickly shatter their turrets, or shatter the Hydra's eye, and so on and so forth. When there's a Racecar Hydra and 3 Spider Destroyers chasing your team around, it's only a matter of time before people start getting chewed up like a chubby kid in Jurassic Park. So if you use a couple of Cobras, you can end up relieving a lot of pressure from your team, and it ends up making things a lot smoother for everyone. Alright, a quick word from whatever sponsor YouTube decides to give us, and then we'll cover kit selection. Unless you use Adblock, in which case this is going to be a really awkward transition. Okay, go. When it comes to character selection, it really depends on whether you're playing solo or with friends. If you're pugging it up with randoms, your best bet is going to be an infiltrator class. The stealth is going to allow you to do those objectives reliably, and then you can babysit your teammates in the incredibly likely event that they're going to be atrocious. Due to the variability of enemies in Plat, since you're facing all of the factions, it's almost impossible to legitimately have everything covered by one character, but I find that the biggest game killers are often the objective waves and then dead people being ignored. I know, crazy surprise, right? There are characters that I'm sure work nearly as well, but again, I think running an infiltrator is going to be your safest bet. I suggest running either the Ngara Avenger or the Asari Huntress for your solo queue adventures. Stealth Grid is based on power cells instead of a cooldown, unlike Tactical Cloak. This translates to Stealth Grid essentially providing infinite on-demand stealth for whatever your wicked little heart desires. The kits that have Tactical Cloak instead of Stealth Grid I find to be a little bit more kill-oriented, and they don't have as many clutch safety tricks as the Stealth Grid users do. This doesn't mean they have none, but I don't think they have quite as many. Realistically though, as long as you're playing a class that has access to some sort of stealth, then you're going to be in a decent position to carry. If you're playing with a couple of buddies, I found it's actually inefficient to just run with a swarm of infiltrators. As such, it's a good idea to have a little bit of variety in your group. For the smoothest runs, you're going to want something along the lines of an infiltrator for objectives, a debuff-based class to help deal with bosses, a support character to help people in clutch moments, whether through healing or tons of crowd control, and then a character that's just based around pure, killing power. Now, almost all kits are going to overlap into more than one of those categories. The Operator, for example, doubles as a god-level debuffer as well as an awesome healing support. The Avenger can absolutely shred through targets while also packing Stealth Grid for the objective and medic utility, and so on and so forth. Am I suggesting that you must run an organized team to be successful? Absolutely not. But if you're trying to make your run as smooth as possible, having a little bit of kit diversity will go a really long way to letting you deal with any situations that might arise. There have been a lot of tweaks to the objectives recently, so we're going to go ahead and run through the general tactics to get through each one. For devices, you ideally want to have an infiltrator on the job. Cloak is going to let your infiltrator safely and quickly traverse to each device. While they dash between devices, the rest of the team can keep enemies busy. This doesn't mean ignore the devices if one spawns close to you as a non-infiltrator, since they're only active for 38 seconds now, but if you see a cloaked guy running up to one, just hold your ground and kill some enemies instead of trying to race him there. If you were already headed out and see someone at a device, again, don't try and race them there. Instead, try and put some distance between the two of you, so that when the next device spawns, there's a better chance that it'll be close to you, so you can go ahead and just knock it out real quick in the event that it is. It's not like a major thing, but it really helps for the sake of efficiency and clearing the wave quickly. Upload and hack are basically the same thing now, in that they're both interrupted by enemy presence, so we're going to just tackle them both at the same time. The general idea is to have 1 to 2 people on the objective or objectives, while the rest of the team runs around on the other side of the map to pull spawns their direction. Even with 4 people on a point, it's nearly impossible to shred all of the bulky enemies that are going to swarm you quick enough to comfortably cap that green ring. If you have an infiltrator on your team, let them solo cap points. Enemies aren't drawn to the objectives, but rather to player presence. When you're cloaked, you're cloaked from that magnetism. So if you've seen the video that I recently posted about this, then you know just how easy it is to stealth cap objectives. Theoretically, it's not as fast due to player numbers boosting completion speed, but it often ends up being faster and more reliable in actuality because you're not having cap progress constantly interrupted by enemies rushing you. When it comes to retrieval, your top delivery boys are going to be characters with either stealth or charge, or in the case of the Avenger, both. This is similar to devices in that, again, you don't want to cluster around that pizza, and instead you want to spread out to buy the delivery boy a little bit of breathing room. One thing to keep in mind is if you're not playing a character that's capable of the speed or evasion necessary to safely run that delivery, do not grab it. Let your infiltrators and vanguards handle it, or otherwise you're just going to be wasting a lot of time by forcing someone else to go back and pick it up from the spawn if you end up dropping it. Assassination is the objective where debuff characters are really going to shine. Oftentimes, 1 or 2 of the contracts will be beefy-ish enemies, while the third will generally be closer to a boss-level enemy. Your debuffer's job is to make that sucker as vulnerable as possible to your team, so that way, as a group, you can just rip right through him. Vanguards and snipers excel at synergizing with your support's debuffs on those assassination targets because they can either close in or nuke the target from a distance, respectively, either way quickly dispatching the enemy. As the trend goes with all the objectives, infiltrators again are quite capable of handling it with ease because they can just weave through the hordes of enemies to pluck those targets off. I know I've talked a lot about infiltrators, and I sound kind of biased and like they're a staple for Platinum, which I mean, realistically, they kind of are a staple, but don't mistake that for thinking that everything else is in a worse off position. Different kits really cater to different needs, and all are going to help to promote a smooth run. Most importantly, though, make sure that you're just having fun. Tuftdog, you sound like a soccer mom. Shut up! Shut up. Really, though. Like, just enjoy the new challenge. Don't force yourself to grind through it endlessly, or you're gonna burn yourself out. Have fun experimenting with kits. Figure out what you enjoy to play in Platinum. What works best for you. Blah, blah, blah. Generic motivational stuff. Just enjoy the game. Don't force yourself to grind through it if you're not having fun. Anyways, that's all I've got for you guys this time. I was going to cover weapons and some other general-ish things, but I decided against it because I think that that stuff is really kit-dependent, so that's something that should be confined more to a build guide. But yeah, alright, well I'm gonna go. If you like this video, consider dropping a like to let me know, and if you're new around here, consider subscribing as well. Catch you next time, gorgeous.
Whee!